Gavin Hood, your new film, Eye in the Sky, is a very contained thriller about the implications of modern warfare. What attracted you to this material?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. Thanks, Zach. Well, I was sent a script by my agent, a wonderful script written by Guy Hibbert, and I was looking for new projects and reading quite a lot. And the hard thing with scripts is some of them are very good, but they're not great, or they just don't grab you enough, and maybe they grab somebody else. But this one, I started reading without any expectations. And by page 10, I was completely hooked, and I couldn't put it down, and I kept turning the pages and wanting to read faster, and I thought I knew what I would do in the circumstances of the film as it was unfolding. And then 2 pages later, I went, was that really what I would do? Or would I do something differently? And I just loved the fact that I kept getting multiple points of view from different characters, none of whom were judged, all of whom had a valid point of view given the specific situation in which they found themselves and the specific role that they were playing. And I didn't feel as if I was being preached to or told what to think in any way, and yet it was constantly challenging me and exciting at the same time. I wanted to know what would happen next. I got to the end of the script and I wanted to talk to somebody. And of course, there was nobody to talk to because you read a script. So I thought, if it's had this effect on me, if I can do a halfway decent job of directing this and keeping up the pace and get some good performances, and then hopefully it will do 2 things for an audience. It will give them a great thriller full of tension and leave them with something to talk about afterwards.
Right, I think it does. Let's talk a little bit about what the movie is about. It's about this military mission to take out a terrorist. They're going to take him out with a drone strike, and into the kill zone walks this little girl. And so it becomes about weighing the options, the pros and cons of taking out this terrorist, but potentially killing this innocent bystander. And you've got points of view from Helen Mirren as one of the military commanders in charge of the mission, and Alan Rickman as another military official, and Aaron Paul as the person who's going to execute the drone strike. So it goes around and around and around, and you get all these different points of view. So talk a little bit about the, I guess, the importance of the subject matter and not making it too preachy.
Well, thank you. It's a great question. Drone warfare is here to stay. It's only going to become more advanced. And there's a lot to talk about because we've kind of heard of drones, and we're even flying our own drones. And in movies, it's really great to use drones from a cinematography point of view. But we don't really know much as a public, myself included, about what this new kind of remote warfare from a distance, really means for us. And the way the battlefield is changing, post the Second World War, the idea of a battlefield was a territory, and this territory attacked that territory. And well, all of that's kind of gone up in the air. Where is the battlefield? Does the battlefield attach to an individual who may be in your town? And if so, what does that mean? Does that mean, and this is a phrase used, that there's a kill box around that individual extending up into the air that is suddenly a battlefield in which military technology can be used? Does that mean, in our movie, do we launch a hellfire into a neighborhood in a friendly country with whom we are not at war in order to take out an enemy combatant? All of these terms are kind of new. They're not part of the language of the last 65 years. So what is the new language? And there is no correct answer right now. We are right on the threshold of a new world order, and it's slightly creepy and a little frightening, and also, I guess, exciting in many ways, and something we have to deal with. So the point of doing the film was not to preach or tell anyone how drones should or shouldn't be used, but to present to an audience a scenario in which they are both thrilled as an audience and get to understand these complex questions and think about them without, as I say, telling them what to think. And that was the thrill of it. And the other thing that's slightly creepy is in the movie, there's that tiny drone, the little bug. And this little bug, a lot of people have said to me, is that real? And I hope I'm not stepping on a question of yours. but this little bug elicits so many comments that I feel I have to address it. One of the things we were worried about when we were making the film was, where will the technology be when the movie comes out? Because movies take time. They take, 6 months to shoot and then edit, and before they're marketed, it's 18 months later. Where is this movie? And our big fear when we were making this film was with the tiny drone, because that little drone was in the experimental stage. The bird that you see, which is about this big, has already been developed and is deployed. It's made by a company here in California. The little tiny bug, which has 2 3D eyes on it, in fact can fly into a room, and using those little lenses, it's stereoscopic photography. It maps the room. It now knows where everything is in this room. And it doesn't even need GPS to fly. It can land. You tell it where to land. Land on, I think I can point to my chair over there. Land there. You don't have to land it. It lands itself. Then you add to that the fact that in our movie, it's not weaponized, because they weren't. But the next step is that tiny drone either carries an explosive charge, or a little dose of anthrax that goes into your nose as it flies by, or a sharp little needle with something nasty in it, in which case our whole movie would have been over, because you don't need to put a hellfire through the roof if you just tell the little drone to fly in and detonate next to the eye of the guy running the video camera, and boom. So all of a sudden you have a moving bullet. You don't need the sniper. So again, what I loved about Guy's script, and what I hope audiences get from the film, is that you can stop this movie almost anywhere and have a conversation, whether it be about the drones and where they're going, what they mean, whether it be about drone pilots. If you stop on Aaron Paul's character, is what he says true? Yes. Even his right to ask for the CDE to be run again is accurately researched. What about Helen Mirren's character? What would you do if you were in her shoes? And I spoke to people who did the job that she does. And I remember one saying to me, when I've been tracking someone for 10 years and I go to bed thinking about them and I wake up thinking about them, I want them off my list. And he said to me, and sometimes I need a lawyer to put his hand on my shoulder and say, not today, buddy. So every one of these characters, I hope, from Helen to Alan Rickman, who is the general, is just trying to get the job done. He reminds me of a director trying to shoot a movie while you got whole of Video Village, all the producers watching your every take, and the studio gets the feedback on the same day. There was a time when I started when they didn't get your rushes for 2 days, and you could, now everybody's chirping in your ear the way they do in the movie. Should you target, shouldn't you? Anyway, I digress. But I love the fact that all of these characters have a valid point of view. And what is the 30,000-foot view to you? What is the right way to use this technology?
Right, absolutely. And you mentioned before the movie being thrilling for audiences. It does work as a thriller in addition to being, you're welcome, yes. So talk a bit about creating that tension, because it is a very contained film. It takes place over a matter of hours and just a few locations. So how do you create tension?
Well, it's a great question. My biggest fear when I read the script was there's a lot of people in rooms and looking at video screens, and sometimes talking to each other by video the way we are, or by telephone. And these can be very static. Your big fear as a director is, will this be, kind of like talking heads, and how to create energy. And so the way to do that from a directing point of view is to, well, certainly I was so afraid of it being static that I looked for every opportunity to make sure that there was pace, from scene transitions to sets. I'll just give you a simple example. I remember going to the line producer and talking about how I wanted to stage Helen Mirren's set. And she's in a bunker, which is a real bunker at a permanent joint headquarters in Northwood, London, down in the bunker. But the truth is, the bunker, they don't walk around as much as they do in our movie. They sit at desks, and they do have these huge screens at the end. But I wanted to lay it out in such a way that I could have Helen move up to those screens, walk away from the screens, confront the lawyer, so that I could have some, she moves into the camera and create some energy. And so the positioning of her desk at the one end of the room, the layout of the desks down the other side, think of it as a good staging of a play. if this was to be performed in the theater and you wanted your actors to have a stage to move on, how would you lay out that set? And so I do that with my production designer, the wonderful Johnny Briett, and we create it in the computer so I can put in camera angles. And one would think, oh, you only do this on a big sci-fi movie. But actually, when you're doing an intimate story like this that could be static, thinking about your staging and where your cameras will be to give good energy and allow the actors to use the space was actually quite important. And we did that in all the sets as much as we could. Obviously more difficult with Aaron Paul because he's sitting statically in that box. But what we did with him, and I hope this doesn't freak him out, but we had him look directly into the lens so that the intimacy with the audience is about as intimate as you can be. When you're really looking into that camera, it can be quite creepy. And that sense of being right inside his head was a way to keep the tension in that room.
Right, and there's also a lot of tension created through the editing of it. And you do have all these multiple characters that you're following and locations that you need to juggle. So can you talk about, you know, in the editorial process, trying to say, okay, we've been here too long, now we need to check in on this character, or maybe we need to put this over here, or just juggling all these different characters in all these different locations?
Well, again, thanks. Very insightful question. And I want to give enormous credit to my editor, Megan Gill, who I've worked with on many, many films. I love Megan dearly. She's a great, we complement one another's energies very well. And really, this was a huge editing challenge for Megan, because in shooting the film, I had to shoot each scene all the way through from every character's point of view because they weren't together. So one of the things that was tricky from a directing point of view, from a performance point of view, from an editing point of view, was on our budget, we couldn't have the actors together all the time. So I'll start there and it becomes an editing, answers your editing question. Helen Mirren arrived first. She's in that bunker, she's got these huge screens. But now remember, there's nothing on those screens. They're green. They're giant green screens. And I've got a little red cross over here that says this is where the little girl is, and over here is where the house where the bad guys are. And this is where, and all she's got is these red and blue crosses on the screens. Alan Rickman is not there. Aaron Paul is not there. It's Helen and moi. And I'm reading their lines behind the monitor and hoping she doesn't load my performance. And I'm also describing to her every single thing that happens at the pace that I hope and think it will happen when I finally shoot that scene of the little girl on the ground. So for example, when after the missile strike and the child is on the ground and we don't know if she's alive or dead, I did the scene with Helen, I did it with Alan, I did it with Aaron, over and over again. She's not moving. She wants to get up, but she can't get up. She's moved. She's not moving. She can feel anyway, you get the idea. And those actors are watching a red cross on a green screen. And I thought, Helen is going to leave. How can any actor pull this off? And I went and I said, this is the only way I know how to do it, Helen. And she said to me, Gavin, I get paid to use my imagination. Go ahead, describe away, and let me know if you've got what you want. I mean, bless you, Helen. And the same applied to Aaron, because Helen then left, and then Aaron Paul arrived. And he and Phoebe Fox sit in that room, and there's a green screen on their little screens. And I'm phoning in as Helen Mirren, and, you know, amazing actors. But from an editing point of view, now you've got the entire scene shot on Helen Mirren's face. You've got the entire scene shot on Aaron Paul's face. And then, by the way, you do it again because now you want the profile shot. And you do it again because you want Phoebe's shot. And you do it again because you want the reaction. And you go over and over and over in real time, sometimes 20, 25-minute takes until my boom operator wants to shoot me. But in the edit room, you now have the best and worst of worlds because you can be anywhere at any time. And you've got so much of this coverage. Who should we be with at this moment in time? Whose reaction at this moment is the right one? And so Megan and Logan, our wonderful assistant editor, I mean, logging every reaction, marking it up, every line, so we could jump and choose. Let's try. And now the next level is the drone. Should we be viewing it from the air, which is really Aaron's point of view? Or should we be down on the ground with the little girl? A wonderful, wonderful jigsaw puzzle, and I'm glad it's done. It was a lot.
You brought up the actors, and it is amazing to think. I think as audiences, we don't realize just how much of acting in a movie like this, or in any movie for that matter, is reacting to things that aren't actually there, you know, like the screens and actors who aren't there at the time. Talk a little bit about finding the right actors for these roles. I mean, Helen Mirren, Alan Rickman, Aaron Paul, Barkhad Abdi, just to name a few. You even have a role in the film, so I guess that one was easy to cast.
No budget. In Cape Town, South Africa. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
But yes, well, yes, the casting is absolutely critical in any movie. You know, if you have a great cast, you're halfway there. A little bit of fun information. The role that Helen played was originally written for a man. In fact, many of the roles in the film were men. Phoebe's character was a man. And I don't say that as any criticism to Guy. I called him out, and I really wanted to do this job. And I said, Guy, I have just a question. I mean, how would you feel if the role of the Colonel was played by a woman? And what if we could get Helen Mirren? Because as I was reading the film, two things struck me. One, Helen Mirren popped into my head because I think she's amazing at playing both strength and edge of humor, confidence, power, vulnerability, all of those things, the same way that Alan Rickman does. Those moments of vulnerability and yet exasperation, how to take the performance to a moment of humor without laughing at yourself or saying, look how funny I am as an actor, allowing the audience to laugh in moments of extreme tension without jumping them out of the film, and yet reeling them back in again. And that's about changing rhythm. You know, that's, if you're playing the same note musically or from a if it's doom, 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 eventually you go, stop, you need doom, doom, and back. And so I think of directing as terms of changing rhythms. And when you have actors with that range, like Helen and Alan and Aaron and all of them, Phoebe, all of the actors, Barkhad, who has such charm and warmth and yet vulnerability, it's changing musical notes. And you can imagine a role, for example, the role that Alan Rickman plays being played very well by an actor who plays him as the stern general who's just had enough, but doesn't give the occasional roll of the eyebrow that just allows you to release for a moment. So the cast was very important. So I called Guy up, and I mentioned to him, I love the script. I just wonder how you'd feel about changing it from a man to a woman. I'm thinking, please don't fire me before I've started. And he, in about 5 seconds, he said, oh man, that's a great idea. Because the second thing it does, apart from getting you a great actress, is it opens the conversation to a much wider audience. I didn't want to make a boys' own war movie when the moral and ethical questions that the film raises are questions that I think men and women will find interesting and should be talking about. So that's how that happened.
Absolutely. So lastly, I wanted to ask you, your film, Tsotsi, won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film kind of early on in your career. What did that kind of recognition mean for you? Obviously, it opened a lot of doors for you so you could come to Hollywood and eventually make films like this. But what did that recognition mean for you in your career?
Wow. It's a great question, and it's a hard one to answer because I wasn't expecting it, obviously, at all. When we set out to make Tsotsi, I mean, we made a film in Tsotsital, which is the language, the street language of Soweto and the shanty towns around Soweto. So it's not in English. We were just hoping we'd get a release in South Africa and make a really good film. I worked with actors, many of whom had never acted before. So I rehearsed with them, worked with them for many weeks so that, you know, that I think their performances are remarkable and extraordinary young actors that we found. And Moon Yin Lee, my wonderful casting director in South Africa, helped me find on this film too, just as a digression, the little girl in Eye in the Sky, the man who plays her father, her mother. These are all Somali refugees who are living in Cape Town, who truly know what it's like to run from Al-Shabaab and the craziness of that situation. So they were incredibly inspiring. But Tsotsi, you know, we put it out into the world, and it won Best of the Fest at the Edinburgh Film Festival. And we were, wow, and we got this offer from Miramax. And I remember sitting around a table with my producers, and we got this offer, and should we take it? And the sales agents keep saying, just relax, guys. I mean, we're going to Toronto. We're going to Toronto. We just won Edinburgh. This is like the best thing that could happen to us. We're going to get swallowed up in Toronto. No, be bold. The only company that's here in Edinburgh is Miramax. The others will all be in Toronto. So we go to Toronto. Well, by some extreme good fortune, it wins Best of the Fest Toronto Audience Award. Next minute, it's a bidding war. Next minute, you know, you're at the Oscars. You don't plan this. This is as much luck as work, as just a confluence of. So all of a sudden, I'm being offered Hollywood work. And truthfully, Zach, I don't think I was fully prepared for that. I had a wonderful experience doing rendition where it was pretty under the radar because the budget wasn't too high. And then I came to make Wolverine. And boy, that was an eye-opener. That was like going to work on this giant studio commercial experience where you've got, you know, a lot of people understandably very nervous because this is a giant franchise. But the truth is I was a little more used to running my own show. And I wasn't used to having somebody else tell me who the second unit was and how that was working, not being allowed to get in there. And so it was a huge wake-up call. I learned a great deal. I'm thankful from that point of view. I learned a great deal in terms of working with visual effects. But let's just say this. Eye in the Sky means a great deal to me because in a way it's coming back to my roots. I felt when I read Guy's script that this was a film that was remarkably well written, had great characters that were not stereotypes in any way, didn't speak down to its audience. Bleecker Street had a wonderful word for the film. They called it smart house entertainment, not art house, not popcorn. And I think that's an interesting phrase that they coined because it feels too much as if we've got two worlds. We're either in the blockbuster world or we're in art house where you kind of go to, but maybe there's a brand that's in between the two. And I think what Eye in the Sky is for me and why I say it's a homecoming is because I think I've been able to take what I learned in Hollywood, which was considerable, about pace, about what I know about visual effects. There are actually 480 visual effect shots in Eye in the Sky. Wow. Out of 2,000 cuts. And I could bore you with those and I won't now, maybe another time. But there really are. And so to create the airfield, for example, that was just in a desert on a runway in outside of Cape Town and build that whole world out of visual effects, which you shouldn't even notice. Mm-hmm. That's how good the visual effects art is. It's real. Those drones are visual effects. All of them. So I took all of that, everything that I've learned from Hollywood, for which I'm very grateful, but went back to a story that was morally complex, not preaching to its audience and leaving them with something to think about. So it's been a special one to do.
And it is a great movie. Gavin, congratulations, and thank you so much.
Thanks so much for the interview.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure talking with you.
And to you. Thanks, Zach. Bye.